Hi, and welcome to CYPA Sit Downs. My name is Nick Curry. On the show today is Sara Edwards. She's a dancer and choreographer with an extensive resume of Broadway shows, including Chaplin, She Loves Me, and Hello Dolly. She's worked with choreographer Warren Carlyle for several years and has been the personal dance coach for Hugh Jackman, Bette Midler, Donna Murphy, just to name a few. Sara, thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
I'm so happy to talk to your students.
What was your process of getting into dance? Can you share a little bit about how you started and what your early high school experiences were in dance and in theater?
Sure. So I started dancing when I was 3. I grew up in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and went to what became One Broadway Dance Center in Hershey. And my mom tap danced when I was a kid, and both of my older siblings were also dancing. So I was sort of the third child, and I did what my older siblings did, which meant I was off to dance class. But I was the only one that really took to it. And I loved it so much. I tap danced, I did ballet, I did jazz, I did all of the things. And when I got into high school, then there was musicals, obviously, to be part of. And I did, let's see, what did we do? We did Grease in high school, which was a blast. Lots of dancing in that one. We did Sound of Music, I remember. Not so much dancing, but some. We did Oklahoma, which was great. Lots of, like, a big dream ballet in that. And so obviously you can hear from what I'm saying that I was more interested in the musicals that had a lot of dancing in them, because that's where my heart was. But it also opened up my eyes to the idea that if theater was what I wanted to do, dancing in theater, that I needed to take voice lessons, and I needed to start investing in, like, the storytelling of dance, not just, pointing my toes and kicking my legs.
One of the students wants to know if there are specific stretches that you find really useful, or can you talk to us about how you warm up prior to a rehearsal or to a performance?
Every rehearsal that I have, whether we're starting at 9 a.m. or at 3 p.m. or it's an evening rehearsal, I try to do at least 30 minutes of stretches and warm-up activities. I as a choreographer, and the choreographers that I work for in the city, it's sort of like being shot out of a cannon sometimes when rehearsal begins. We never know what we're going to make. We never know if we're going to be jumping for 8 hours or if we're going to be spinning for 8 hours. So it's important at the beginning of the day to do some stretches. A lot of them, now I've been really enjoying some yoga stretches, long stretches, taking deep breaths. And I find that warms me up faster sometimes than other stretches do. So I like to do some yoga. Sometimes I just sort of jog around the rehearsal room just to sort of get my lungs working, and deep breaths. And I also love ballet still. So sometimes I'll go and put my hand on the wall and do some plies and stretches and anything I can. And it varies because, you got to keep a variety so that it stays interesting.
As a dancer, what are your tips for memorizing choreography quickly? And how do you push past the frustration of just something that's so difficult that makes you kind of want to give up?
Don't hate me for saying this, but it's sort of like a special power of mine that I seem to have just been given. It's a God-given gift that I pick up choreography really, really quickly. It's just something that I do. But I will say that when I teach, and I talk about this with the students that I teach in the city, that I often talk about how our brains are also a muscle, and a lot of it is the more frequently you force yourself to learn choreography, the better and the faster you'll be at picking it up. So the more classes you can take, or the more things you can do online to learn choreography, the better you'll get at it, because that muscle will just get stronger and stronger. And also, there are just some styles of choreography that are harder to pick up than others. So try not to beat yourself up also while you're learning it. Like, give yourself a chance to take a deep breath and say, like, okay, I need to slow down if I'm going to learn this. And that's all right too.
What about that really tough choreography that makes you want to give up? What keeps you going in the midst of that?
Before I started creating my own dance as a choreographer, that was really hard for me. There are definitely some pieces in shows or at auditions that would be so difficult that I just wanted to leave the room. But I do think it is just a learning experience. And The other thing is when you're doing it as a professional and you're being paid to do it, you just have to like hunker down like you do with your schoolwork and just say like, I am going to write this paper, or like, I am going to learn this choreography, whatever it is. But now that I am a creator of on my own, I also, when someone gives me something to learn that I find really difficult, it's such a great challenge. Like, I try to challenge myself to create things that I've never seen before. So when other people teach me things that I haven't seen, it's like, it's the desire to learn something new, like just picking up a new skill.
A student wanted to know if dance is a required aspect in all forms of acting, and maybe how having some dance background can improve you as a performer.
I think that dance can play a huge part in the physical state of any actor, any singer, right? So if you've ever taken a singing lesson, you've done breathing exercises, you've laid on the floor, you've hung your head over while you're singing. There's lots of physical movement that goes into being a singer. And actors, if you've seen a play or watched a film, they are very physical when they act, and in those passionate scenes, and the calmness and stillness that they have to have in their quiet scenes. All of that is physical activity. And if you think about it that way, it's not necessarily dance, but it is a physical state that you're in when you're playing those roles and telling those stories. But yeah, dance is an amazing thing. Having that having a little bit of flexibility in your legs, having strength, actual muscular strength, so that you can move things around on the stage, or having a simple dance step that you're able to do can really, really be beneficial to a director when he's trying to piece together a scene.
Personally, what is your favorite type of dance, or maybe music that you really enjoy dancing or doing choreography to?
I have always loved to tap dance. And that is something that when I moved to New York after graduating from high school and going to college at Oklahoma City University, I realized really quickly that it was suddenly a special skill, that not everyone that I was auditioning with could tap dance. But I have always loved it. I've always loved it, and I've gotten to be part of some really great tap shows. That being said, I don't think that everyone has to tap dance, obviously, to be in a Broadway show or any theater show. But it is like a great rhythmical special skill that I've always loved, and it's a great like energy. It gets my blood pumping and my energy going. I love it.
We had a lot of questions about what are dance auditions like at that Broadway level. Can you maybe speak from the dancer's perspective first, and then maybe give us a look at the other side of the table after that?
So my first auditions when I got to New York were super stressful. It's pretty stressful. You look in like they have, well, now they're all online, they're all on websites, but there's basically like trade papers that list what time auditions are happening and what dance shoes that you should bring, and if they want you to sing a song, what kind of song you should sing afterwards. Some of them even tell you how to dress, right? To wear like more athletic clothing. Don't wear your dress to this audition, wear pants because it's going to be athletic, or whatever it is. And you show up with your massive dance bag and your book of music, and there's a giant room full of girls or guys who are all trying to do the same thing you are. And the most amazing thing about that room that I discovered when I was a dancer and trying to get performing jobs is that room is your family and is your community. So even though you're competing with them, like you probably are at school, you're competing with all your fellow classmates, that's also the people who are going to be there to lift you up and to challenge you. And so in those audition rooms, if I could wrap my head around that concept, that I was not only competing with them because I wanted the job over them, but that I could watch them and learn from them, that was like a real, that really tipped the scale on being in the room and how to be comfortable in the room. And then the other thing that I always tried to think about is that, and this is true now that I'm on the other side of it and I am running auditions, is that I try to always be a kind person in the room, because besides a really talented human, they want to work with someone that is a nice person, that they want to spend every day in a rehearsal studio with, creating something. So you can't be nasty and get a good job. You got to be a nice human. And when I run auditions, I try and lead with a lot of kindness. That's really important to me, because all of those people are just trying to get a job, and we all got to work together. And I want them to be the answer. If I know I need to cast 10 people, I'm hoping that 100 people come in and they are all right for that job. That doesn't always happen. But I am full of positivity that maybe all of my dreams will come true. And I think a lot of people go into audition rooms and they're so stressed out and, oh, will I be able to do it? And, you know, they go with a lot of anxiety, but the truth is that we all want the same thing. We all want to create something awesome. And if you can just go in with a positive outlook and some joy in your heart, then you're there for the right reason and everybody will get along.
I think the secret that everybody wants to know was, what can you do to stand out in that big group? What are you looking for as a choreographer that's really going to make somebody pop above the others in the room?
It sort of goes back to what I was saying about even in high school, like getting to be part of musicals and learning like, oh, right, dance has storytelling to it too. And I had some great dance teachers that taught that as well. But I think that what makes one dancer stick out from another in the room is someone who can not only pick up the choreography and execute it well, but that can also tell me a story. Because right now, especially on Broadway, there was a time when there was like the singing choir, and then, you know, like the singing chorus and the dancing chorus and the, you know, the principals. But now that singing and that dancing group have sort of melded together, very much so, in a lot of the big Broadway shows. And that means that those people have to be able to dance, have to be able to sing, and they have to be able to be people, be characters that exist in a town or exist at a high school or exist, you know, when you go to see Mean Girls, like all of those ensemble members, I'm sure could tell you their character's name, where they live, what their parents are like, you know, like they all have a huge background story. And the most successful dancers in an audition room are the people who can not only dance the choreography, but also like tell me who they're gonna embody on stage in a character.
And that's something that they've brought with them in their preparation before the audition, not something that they're told to do.
Yeah, and that they want to do that, and that's fun for them and easy for them to just, you know, it's not necessarily like oohing and awing the way that we sometimes do when we're in dance school at a young age, but like really like, you know, like pretending there's someone in the corner that you're dancing to specifically, or, you know, if you're auditioning beside someone that you're trying to play off of that person beside you. And just to show that you have a real presence in the room beyond just smiling and dancing.
There were several questions about difficult pieces that you've worked on, or maybe challenging moments. Anything stick out as a particularly, and it could be something that turned out to be really rewarding in the end, but just that you thought, boy, when I finally get this, it's going to be incredible, but in the moment, it's really, really tough.
So the most difficult choreography I've ever done on a Broadway stage myself was probably in a show called Chaplin that existed for a short period of time. We only ran for about 6 months, but it was a beautiful show. Man, it was a great show. And in that show, there was a sequence at like a party or something that Charlie Chaplin was at, and there was a tango that happened. And I got to be part of, even though I was not on the creative team at all, I was sort of chosen to create this specialty feature dance part. And I had this amazing dance partner whose name was Tim. And he was, I don't know, I think he's 6'4" or 6'5". I'm 5'6", so he's got a lot of headroom on me. But we made this amazing tango, and it was so hard, and my body was in so much pain. But I just kept pushing myself to learn it and to make it better, because I knew that once it got on stage, that if I could do it, that it would be awesome. And I loved doing it every night. I looked forward to it in the show every single night. But I mean, I ran at him at one point and like slid across the floor, and he picked me up and threw me around him. And I mean, it was really physical. I had bruises. I injured my wrist doing it. It was wild, but it was really exciting. So that was difficult in a challenging, positive way. I would say that there's also another show that I was part of that won the Tony Award for Best Choreography. It was called After Midnight. And that show had a solo contemporary lyrical modern piece in it, that this beautiful dancer, female dancer called Karine Plantati, she's French, and she danced it for us, but I helped create it. So before she ever saw it or tried to dance it, I was in a room with Warren Carlisle, the choreographer, trying to create it. And I was having a really hard time accessing the style of movement that he wanted in the room. So as a collaborator, as his associate choreographer, trying to give him ideas was a really difficult day for me. I couldn't quite hone in on what he wanted. And I was also sore that day, but in a not so happy, pleasant way. And we worked on it, we worked at it. And eventually when we brought it to Karine and tried to teach it to her, she loved it and she struggled with it too, which actually gave me a little bit of like, okay, so I'm not the only one, which is great. And then this really beautiful moment happened where she was struggling with it. And she said, Sarah, will you dance it for me? Can we play the music and will you dance it for me and show it to me? And I was terrified, could have crapped my pants, frankly, sorry. But I did it. I did it with my whole heart, with as much energy as I could muster. And I'm sure I wobbled and fell over the place, but in my memory, it was like a soaring moment of success where I really, really got over a huge fear of a piece of choreography that was too challenging for me. And to have someone, she is a fabulous, gorgeous dancer, and to have someone like that say, can you show me how to do this? was amazing and really rewarding.
So you knew from an early age that you wanted to dance in theater. How did you actually make it to New York and get connected to Broadway?
Oh, I was a stinker. As a teenager, I used to usher at the Hershey Theater for free. And my parents' house is very close to there in Hershey. And I ushered at as many shows as I possibly could. And I would stand, once we were done seating people, we were allowed to sort of stand in the back, or if there was a seat, we could sit in it. And I would stand there and watch every show. And there was a woman, I think her name was Diane Paulus, maybe, who ran the theater. And she would stand by me. She knew I liked dancing. And she would say, like, oh, maybe someday you'll be up there, Sarah. And she still quotes me to this day as saying, oh, no, that's what I'm going to do with my life. So that is where I have always wanted to be. And the dance studio that I grew up at took us on New York trips once a year or twice a year to go up, and we would take lots of dance classes and see shows. And the more I went, the more I just knew. I knew that's where I wanted to be. And I went off to college and learned a little bit more. I knew I didn't want to just graduate high school and move to the city. That wasn't for me. I definitely wanted to go off to school. And when I left the university, I had friends that went to LA and I had friends that went to Chicago to dance, but I wanted to be in New York City. And I moved to New York and I was raring to go. So excited to get a side job and go to auditions and just try and see if I could actually make it. So it's something I was always passionate about. I made that decision really early on, whether my guidance counselors understood it or not. Even if they persuaded me to try and do something that they felt was more academic when I went away to school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
You have been a swing for several shows. Can you explain to our students what it means to be a swing and what that experience is like?
So a swing is required in every production that happens in New York, and very frequently in regional shows they'll have them as well. A swing is essentially the understudy for the ensemble. So the swing, there's usually a female swing and a male swing, sometimes a couple of each. And so a female swing, when I did that, and there were 10 females on stage every night in the ensemble, my job was to know every single move, every single vocal line, every single costume change for those 10 women. And so if they are sick or they are injured or they have a personal day to go to a wedding or whatever, it would be my job to go on stage and perfectly fill their shoes so that no one in the audience would notice that the show was different. Sometimes those swings also understudy principals. Since they're off stage watching the show every night or in the dressing room every night, they can learn those roles too, depending on their skill set.
Like, what would that mean for you? Like, how did you approach learning everybody's part?
Yeah, so learning to be a swing is really exciting and nerve-wracking. When you get cast as a swing, you usually hope to find out how many people are in the cast. Sometimes if there's 2 female swings, you divide and conquer and learn half the show at a time. But essentially, you work with what's called the dance captain, which is usually an ensemble member in the chorus that is their job is also to know everybody's roles, but a lot of times they're on stage doing their own show, and you work with them and you map out the show on stage charts. Oh, I wish I could show you. Maybe I will show you. You map out the whole show on stage charts. We do it on like our iPads now with a really cool app, I guess, that's called StageWrite, WRITE, StageWrite. And it lets you make little markers for every person on the stage and you move them around. Basically, to prepare to be a swing means that you sit through every rehearsal and you make notes about every dance move that people are making. If there's partnering, you usually, like when everyone else is on a break, you get to get up and sort of go through those motions and try and figure them out for yourself. And when you go into your technical rehearsals for the show, where all the lighting and the costume changes, that's usually when you get to have costume fittings and everything changes in a new show overnight. So over and over and over again, things change and you just try and keep up. And then someone gets sick and they say, okay, you're on. And you go on the stage. And that's kind of it. That's the preparation. And you hope that you've paid attention enough and that everyone has supported you enough that you're learning it correctly. And the stage managers and the directors and choreographers and everyone is very helpful and knowledgeable. But usually it is just truly like your own brain power and how you, everyone has a different system of how you take your notes. Whatever works for you is kind of the rule of thumb for swings. Some people don't write a thing down, which I don't really understand, but sometimes people don't write anything down. They just keep it in their head and they're able to go on stage for, 8 people plus, which is incredible. That is a skill. That's a skill. So that's the stage design for Hello Dolly with the passerelle. All of these little squares are people in the cast. Those red dots are principals. And the blue part that you see in the background was lifted from the actual set design, and that was the hay and feed store. So it's great program. You can put number lines on it, and every swing uses this. There's like a giant arrow you can see going across there, and that's the movement that those people are doing. They're coming from the wing, they're following that line, and then going off into the other wing. So that's and I have it on my phone because when I used to run rehearsals for the show, I didn't want to have my computer with me every day or even my iPad. But if someone had a question, I could quickly pull it up on my phone. And that's an amazing asset as a swing as well, that if someone like gets sick in the middle of the show, that you can just pull up your phone and go like, boom, 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 and like remember where you're supposed to stand at all times. And then you're good to go. So it's an incredible app that an associate director of Susan Stroman, who's a famous Broadway director choreographer, her associate, whose name is Jeff Whiting. He's a big guy now in our business. But when he was her associate, he created that app. He was like, right when that all became a thing on our phones, that apps were happening. That was his contribution. And man, has it been a big one.
One of the most exciting parts about watching the Tony Awards is the opening number, because every host brings something different to it. And you were actually featured in the opening number of the Tony Awards one year. Can you tell us about performing in the Tonys and what that experience was like?
It was a blast. I mean, especially if being on Broadway and being in theater is something that you really want to do with your life, being at the Tony Awards in any capacity is like, like being at the Super Bowl. It's but like being a player in the Super Bowl or like affiliated in some way really close to it. It was awesome. Like getting to rehearse and learning like inside secrets about who was going to be there and make cameos and all of that, but you can't tell anybody, but it's like the best news you've ever gotten to hold on to because it's about your community, is really a blast. And it's just a huge celebration. It's a party. It's a night when we try to scream to the world through CBS that we think that what we get to do with our lives is the greatest thing ever. And maybe some people care, but I'm not sure that everyone does. But it's great. And then after you're part of the opening number, you get to hang out backstage, and there's like a really cool lounge area where the people who are doing the introductions and the host and everybody hang out, and there's like snacks and stuff, and you get to just literally like hobnob and rub elbows with everyone you've ever wanted to meet in your life. It's the coolest. It's the coolest.
I will try to find the clip of that and then put it in the description so that people can go watch that a little bit later on. So if I am hoping to make it in New York, maybe not as a dancer, but I just want a little bit of a dance background, what would be the best style of dance for me to study to just kind of get some movement under my belt?
Any style of dance is going to benefit you. The singers that I know very frequently will take like a beginner jazz class. Some of them will go take a beginner ballet class because that's great stretching. And the great thing about ballet is the discipline of it, right? So you really learn how to hold your body, and it builds strength really quickly. But I would say just a beginner jazz class, just something that's going to teach you like a basic turning skills, some rhythm in your feet, and a couple of jumps, and that's it. I mean, it's really also so much for singers that aren't great dancers. It's about figuring out if they have great rhythm and in their song capacity or playing an instrument, figuring out how to get that rhythm into your physical state is really challenging for some people. So anything you can do to get your body to move to those counts of 8 is great.
I'm sure there's going to be parallels for any type of performing, but how did you go from performer to creator? Make that transition between dancer and choreographer?
All right, so the transition from performer to creator for me was maybe not what the norm is. A lot of my choreographers that I've worked with or for would tell you that they knew from the moment they booked their first performing job that they weren't going to stay as a performer, that they were going to transition and that they just wanted to create. They could tell that that's where they would live. For me, I would be happy to be in a Broadway show dancing, or any show dancing, for the rest of my life as a performer. I love it so much. There's nothing that makes me happier than like moving through space to music. But a handful of years ago, when I met Warren Carlyle, he identified something in me, is what I would say, that I had the ability to come up with some pretty great ideas and to move around the room and create dance structure and choreography that was really musical and rhythmical, and that my dance skill set, because I am advanced in a lot of different styles of dance, that makes my ability to create higher, because I know a lot of skills. And so I have, especially since I have a 5-year-old and a 6-month-old, and especially since those guys have entered my life, being able to be creative while having them and raising them has been an easier thing for my family financially than frankly like hanging out and hoping that I would book a job off an audition. But I also really enjoy it. I like creating and teaching. I love teaching classes and watching people learn what I've made and find joy from it. So that's been sort of the driving force behind creating things. And that's what makes this time sort of so difficult, is that there's no one to spark that joy with, of creating things for.
How do you prepare yourself to teach other people your choreography? And I'm sure that's different depending on if you're working with a group of young dancers who are fit and energetic versus maybe a legend of the stage who might need some extra help. I'm thinking specifically of the story you told about working on Follies with some of the ladies there.
Right. So, great. So, how to teach people to dance? I think that there are a couple ways that people learn just in your average dance class, which is that some people can watch a piece of choreography, and if they do it to music, it clicks. There's some people that watch a piece of choreography, and if you count it for them, it clicks. Right? There's some people that watch a piece of choreography, and if you go ba da boo ba 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 da ba, and you like sing the rhythm to them, it clicks. So there's lots of different ways. And that's also something that if you're struggling learning something, to try and do it, learn it in a different way. Do it over and over again to the music. Do it over and over again with counts. Like maybe it's the counts and syncing your right foot with count 5 or whatever it is, that can really help people when they're struggling to learn. But when we did this incredible production of Follies at the Kennedy Center, started at the Kennedy Center and then moved into Broadway, there were women in that show that are fabulous. And we called them divas because they just deserve that word. They have astounding resumes and skill sets. But so Bernadette Peters, she's a dancer. I will say that. Jan Maxwell, not a dancer. Elaine Page, love her, not a dancer. You know, like, and the list goes on and on. But those women had to do a tap number together. And so at the beginning of the day, for the first half hour of the day, we just basically did a basic tap class with them to get them moving. We did flaps and we did shuffles and, you know, like toes and heels, and just trying to get them to articulate their feet in their tap shoes. But the choreography was really challenging for them. And Elaine Page has a potty mouth and would curse a lot. And at one point she went and sat down because her feet were hurting her. And I went and sat down beside her, and we were working on a piece of choreography. And I said, well, why don't we try it sitting down? And so I was sitting with her, and everyone else was in the room practicing. And I was sitting with her, and we were moving our feet around just seated. And she was like, this is so much better because the weight is off my feet. They don't hurt as much. And then here comes Bernadette Peters, and she sat down on the other side of me. And then like there was Jan Maxwell and Terry White and Susan Watson, and I mean all of these incredible women that were in the show. And suddenly I found myself sitting in the back of the room surrounded by Broadway legends who all had sort of clicked into this idea that I had that maybe it would be easier if we all sat down and tap danced. And it left our amazing choreographer, and at that point his assistant, because I was not the assistant, I just was the dance captain, just trying to help out a little bit. Sort of standing in the front of the room with their arms crossed, looking at me like, huh, right, great. You just took over the whole room. And I didn't mean to, but they were responding to the fact that I had found a different way for their brains to click into the choreography. And that was a huge lesson to me, because there have been some incredible people that I've gotten to work with, like Harry Connick Jr. and now Hugh Jackman. And they are not natural born dancers. So you have to find a way as the teacher to get them to embrace the choreography without getting overly frustrated with it, so that they'll come back tomorrow for more, and so that the product eventually is something that people want to pay to see on Broadway, which is, you know, my ultimate goal in teaching them. But I would say that it's just like, you just have to keep trying different ways. You got to try different ways. And when you think that you've, you know, when you think that you've run out of ideas, you go sit in a chair and suddenly the choreography clicks and you're learning it better than you ever thought you could. So that's it.
When you meet people and you tell them that you're a choreographer, what do you find is the biggest misconception that they have about what you actually do?
The idea of creating choreography, when the majority of the people out there have never been in a high school musical or a dance class, when they go and they see a final product on stage, they have no concept of the blood, sweat, and tears that go into that. I like to say on any first day of rehearsal that it is a miracle that show is in rehearsal. It's a miracle that show has already been cast, that there's a set that's been designed, that there's costumes in production, that there's all those things coming down the pike. And with that goes dancing, right? When you learn to sing, you can see the music notes on the paper, and you can sort of understand how someone would like whistle a tune and go like, huh, and write it down in those little black dots, right? And obviously actors have the words on their page. But when you see a script, very frequently when it gets to a dance sequence, it just says, and then they dance. Which means, as the choreographer, like, throw me a bone, right? Like, what does that mean? And that means that the possibilities can be endless, right? You can make it as long or as short. And then they dance can be 30 seconds or it can be 10 minutes. And I think it's really difficult for people to understand how that creation happens, because it isn't something that can be notated that easily. But I usually tell people, like, when you freestyle to music, when you're at a wedding or something, do you feel like you do the same moves over and over again? And do you feel like when the music changes, do you shift and do a different dance move? That's choreography. And all I have is a different level and a different vocabulary of a very long, giant dictionary of vocabulary that I can use to set to music. And then once I've made it up, the other people in the room do it. Or if I see something that somebody else is doing that I really love, I can say, like, ooh, everybody do what they just did. That was good. That was good. That's exactly it. Right. And that's how you structure it. But really, it's just freestyle that has been structured. And that's sort of kind of how I try to explain choreography to people who have never been in a dance room and done it on that sort of level.
You've worked with a lot of incredible people. The person that our students most want to know about is Hugh Jackman. Can you tell us about what it's like to choreograph for Wolverine?
With Wolverine, yes. He's a blast. He is, I mean, truly, he is everything you want him to be. He is, I mean, it is no accident that he is who he is the simplest way to say it. He is not only one of the most determined and disciplined people I've ever met, but he's also really kind. Like, he is a nice guy. And I think that persona precedes it. Like, a lot of people know him as being a nice guy in all of his interviews, but that is real. Like, that is legitimate. He has a good heart. He and his wife have been married for, I don't know, like a long time, a ridiculously long time. 30 something years, I think. Like, they've known each other a very long time. And they have two beautiful kids. He is a family man. He has dogs that he walks himself. Like, he's just a good guy. He reads a lot of books. He likes to talk about the news. He's a good guy. And in the room, usually before he even shows up to like a 10 a.m. rehearsal with me, he's already been to his trainer. He's already been on the treadmill. Like, he's an animal about his workout schedule. He loves it. He wears me out in the rehearsal room, is the truth. Like, we'll go over a sequence, and if he can't get it, his way of learning is repetition. So he will do it 1,000 times if he needs to get it right. Repetition. He just drills it and drills it and drills it. And then this amazing thing happens where he'll come back the next day and he does it. He's also naturally dexterous, like with hand props and things like canes. I'm fumbly. I drop canes. Don't count on me in a show to ever be able to hold onto a cane. But he does. He's got canes. He can do hat tricks. He learns things very easily.
The last category of question is all about advice to aspiring dancers. We have some who are hoping to maybe be a Rockette someday. But what advice would you give to somebody who they have a dream like you? They want to be a dancer and they know that they want to dance in theater. What would you tell them?
Well, the Rockettes are amazing. I, at one point, thought I wanted to be a Rockette too, but like I said, I'm only 5'6", which would put me on the end of the line, and who wants to be on the end of the line? I think the Rockettes, first of all, have a great summer camp that if you're looking for something to do over the summer, I mean, I don't know what will happen to it this summer, but they do an amazing Rockettes intensive, where high school students can come in and sort of learn for the summer what it's like to be a Rockette and do this incredible training. And that also funnels into the actual organization of the Rockettes. So that's a great thing to look at. And there's a couple of great companies. Broadway Collective is one of them. There's one called Broadway Dreams Foundation that do a lot of teaching and classes and seminars and things about what to do and how to make your dreams come true when you come to the city. And all of them are being funded by, or all of the classes are being taught by people who are currently doing it right now. So you are getting information that is current, to say the least. But I think that the biggest thing is honestly that, and you'll hear a million people in the industry say this, which is that in a lot of times I had great supportive parents. They're still very supportive, so that was helpful. But I think that you also have to be like your own biggest cheerleader. And that doesn't mean being like a crazy ego or being, like I said, nasty or anything like that. But if it is something that you truly believe that you want to pursue, no one is doing what I'm trying to do for my living because it was ever easy, right? Like right now we're in the middle of this crazy pandemic and Broadway is closed down for who knows how long. And a lot of us have been saying like, oh God, like who's going to come back from this? How many people are going to move on to other careers? And probably a lot of people will. But those people might have already been questioning leaving the business anyway. But if this is something that you want to pursue, that this is something that you want to go after, you got to have resilience and you have to really believe in yourself. And if there is a skill that you don't think that you have to pursue, you have to find an avenue to pursue it. You got to find that voice teacher that's really going to help you. You have to find a great teacher at your school or something who can help educate you about the theater and how to pursue it. Just surround yourself, build up that army of educators and believe in yourself.
So what other advice would you give to somebody who's trying to make it in New York? What's the key to success?
You know, there is plenty of struggle going on, but in a lot of ways, like I do feel like I have a success story. And I've gotten to do a lot of really exciting things. And that's nice to share with people to sort of lift them up a little bit, that it can happen. And to also say that like, there is no one pathway. Like that is maybe one thing that I could have said, which is just like preparing yourself to get to New York. Like there isn't one way, you know, like I ushered and I did our musicals in high school and I went to college and moved to New York. And that's, you know, on the surface, the path that a lot of people take, but there's so much more to that, you know, like, and there isn't one way to get there. There isn't one way to get there. A lot of people move to the city and go like, oh, I don't have a talent agent. How am I going to ever get a job? I don't have an agent. Well, you don't have to have an agent. You just have to be talented. Like you'll get an agent if you can get a job. You know, it's like, there's not one way to do it. And sometimes that's reassuring and sometimes that's even more terrifying, but it's true.
Sara, thank you so much for sitting down with us today and talking to our students.
Yeah, good luck. I hope it's I hope the rest of your school year is as successful as it can be.
Thank you.